I would like to just say my name is Sylvia Schwagzerg. I'm very happy to welcome you to this conference, but there are two far more important people who are going to give the opening statements. Before I let them come up, please note, there was a slide here before, we're trying to involve you as much as possible in this conference. So the first question to you today is, what are your expectations for this conference? So if you have any multitasking abilities, please, while you're listening to the opening statements, type in something to give to us so we can reflect upon it when the opening statements are finished. All right? And while you're doing that, I would like to welcome the Swedish Minister for Enterprise and Innovation, Mikael Damberg, to give the first opening statement.
Good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to this conference on the next production revolution. Sweden are very proud to co-organize this conference together with the OECD, focusing on new technologies, structural change, and the growth in the light of a new industrial revolution. I would like to extend my gratitude to the OECD and Mr. Doug Frantz with us here today for a much appreciated cooperation in putting this conference together and through your report, The Next Production Revolution, pinpointing some of our most relevant issues in the years to come. I'm looking forward to see the final report that will be finalized during the winter, as I understand. I would also like to extend a warm welcome, especially to our international guests. Many of you represent countries whose policy strategies related to the fourth industrial revolution have inspired and served as inspiration to us in Sweden. The future exchange of policies with you will be important for us when we develop our strategies in the years to come. As Sweden has defined our smart industry strategy and will continue to do so in the future, we intend to stay a front-runner nation when it comes to the fourth industrial revolution. Now, as a scene setter today, I would like to take a step back. The global context is rapidly changing. Geopolitical turbulence and global warming are some of the challenges on top of government's agenda these days. And one recent election has overnight given a new global setting, as has the Brexit. In the light of these developments, one might ask, how important is the potential of new technologies, global value change, or supply of skills? All of the themes to be discussed today and tomorrow. My answer is, it's exactly these issues that we need to address. The need for growth, inclusiveness, the adaptation to structural change, new technologies, job creation, and more important than ever before. It is hard to overestimate the enormous potential that can come with the connected and more sustainable industry production. The new area strengthen the links between products and consumers, erase the differences between goods and services, and can deliver smarter and more inclusive societies, solving many of our common challenges if we do the right thing. 3D printing is one of the technologies changing production as we know it. With new, faster and more precise production, minimizing transportation and the lag between development and production, enhanced automation, robots with better machine learning, linked with analysis of data produced by sensors, will be component in connected smart factories. All these components hold the potential to increase productivity, and together they will render production more efficient and flexible. Most of the technologies and solutions are not projects for the future or experiments in lab. They already exist and are ready to be used in society today. Self-driving vehicles are tested, new bio-based fuels are being commercialized, and the startup sector is booming with new smart innovations and business models. The rapid technological development affects those working in industry, since jobs are replaced with new technologies. The latest figure shows in Sweden that in every year around 330 jobs disappears only in our country. However, at the same time, new jobs will emerge from new technologies, and around 400,000 new jobs are created every year. The digitalization of the society and industry is complex and rapid, and there is a risk that some individuals feel excluded or worried that the change is threatening their jobs and their inclusion in society. This is not a new phenomenon. Ever since spinning Jenny over 100 years ago, structured change has met both enthusiasm and skepticism. However, our road to the further growth, inclusive societies, lies not in protecting old business models, but including more of society in new possibilities. Hence, it is urgent for us policymakers to do all we can to prepare our societies for new jobs and the new technologies created. We must also work to preserve free and open global trade. Let me make a few comments on these three vital factors. First, the supply of skills. Many companies are trying to hire new personnel, but the skills they need are often hard to find. At the same time, individuals with shorter education are at risk of losing their jobs as they might be replaced by automation or digitalization. Not only do we need to extend the government's focus on education and lifelong learning, we also need to include all of society in the rapid change. This is our shared responsibility in all our countries, and I believe both governments and industry share the responsibility in doing so. Second, the embrace new technologies and research. We need to focus more on the integration of small and medium-sized companies into the new production revolution. This implies to help small and medium-sized companies to tackle digitalization, new innovations, and standards in order to find new solutions. If they do, they can stay competitive and contribute with both new jobs and better growth. However, many surveys indicate that SMEs are lacking time and perhaps knowledge in how to go about in absorbing innovation in the speed necessary. Lifting small and medium-sized enterprises will therefore be vital, not only for society, but also for their business partners. Third, free and open trade. Over the years, global value chains have tied the world economics closer together, showing us that economy is far from a zero-sum game. On the contrary, we are better off in specializing and cooperating. The threat of more trade barriers or the risk or lack of new trade agreements will affect our intertwined economies and result in a negative impact to the global economy. To find understanding and acceptance for global interdependency will become more important. If it is not clear how we benefit as individuals, as societies, it might be hard to accept. To wrap up, the issues on our agenda these days are vital to handle global challenges. But not only do we need to move fast and embrace new technologies and business models, we also need to work together in and in between our respective in our countries and between our countries to include everyone and to find acceptance and willingness to change in order to create new jobs and better growth. I look forward to interesting discussions and wish you all very welcome to Stockholm. Thank you very much for being here, and with this I would like to give the floor to Doug Frantz. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Damberg, and thank you to the Ministry and to Vinnova in particular for organizing this conference. International events like this require many things to be taken into account, both substance and process, and I think that the collaboration between the OECD and the elements of the Swedish government and other stakeholders here has been exemplary, as evidenced, I think, by all of the bright faces in the crowd today. I once had an editor. I used to be a journalist, and I once had an editor who told me that I had repeated something in a very long story, and he said, "It's okay. Sometimes repetition for emphasis is valuable. And so I'm going to repeat some of the themes that the minister raised because I think they are valuable, and it shows, I think, that the Swedish government and the OECD are on the same page. And in fact, Sweden is an enormously active and generous contributor to the OECD, and we treasure the membership and especially the very effective and excellent Ambassador Annika Markovic, who is here with us this morning. Thank you for coming, and thank you for all your service in Paris. This event is a critical culmination of 2 years of OECD work on the opportunities, risks, and policy challenges associated with new technologies in production. Indeed, one function of this event will be to present and discuss empirical findings and policy ideas developed over the course of these 2 years. This will provide us with a final round of feedback from the policymakers, industrialists, and academics who are here with us over the next 2 days before we finalize the paper mentioned by the minister and come out with publicly with our conclusions and policy recommendations. So I want to stress to you what I assume many of you, if not all of you, know, and that is that the subject of this conference, the next production revolution, is a topic that's very hot all across the globe. And we had a conference when we have in June every year, we have our ministerial conference where we get our marching orders for the next year. And one of the most interesting and important sessions this past June was on the next production revolution. Now, many OECD countries have or are developing strategies for what is sometimes called Industry 4.0. All OECD countries want to understand how the new technologies in production will affect growth and productivity. This is particularly important given the low growth that we see around the globe today and the darkness as we look into the future about how that's going to be turned around. And so I think this has really sparked enormous interest in this topic. All governments also wish to better understand how digital and other technologies will affect the availability of jobs, the quality of those jobs, and the skills their populations will need to do those jobs. All governments also want to know how they can help new production technologies spread across the economy and not just remain the preserve of the largest and most productive enterprises. Last night at dinner, I had a conversation with Johan Frisk, whom you'll hear from tomorrow, about his efforts to spread robotic technology to small and medium enterprises across Sweden, and I have a sense he wants to do this for the whole world. So that will be a very interesting discussion tomorrow. And all governments also want to assess whether technologies such as bioproduction and 3D printing can help meet the most pressing environmental challenges. I also would add another element there, self-driving cars. I live in Paris, and my hope for self-driving cars is that it will suddenly be safe to cross the street there. The list of policy concerns linked to new production technologies is long. The need to understand the implication of these new technologies is, of course, not confined to OECD countries. In its presidency of the G20, China has also made the next industrial revolution one of its 3 priorities. Our deliberations today and tomorrow will feed into a study that the OECD is doing on the Industrial Revolution on behalf of the Chinese government as part of its presidency. And we expect to deliver that early next year, and we're doing that in cooperation with UNCTAD and UNIDO, 2 UN organizations. And Germany, which will be the incoming president of the G20, has also made the digital economy and society a priority. So again, I think this underscores the significance of these issues. And then finally, I would say that the OECD, we have begun an enormous 2-year project on the digital economy led by our Science and Technology and Innovation Directorate. And this is really an all-of-house effort to understand all of the complexities, all of the challenges, and all of the opportunities that come with the digital economy. And we will have 10 of our directorates involved in that. It's really going to be, I think, one of the most exciting exciting projects in recent OECD history. There is clearly widespread interest in this, but there's also concern. But I think that concern is not a reason to panic. Predictions that automation, now called the digital economy, will make humans redundant have been around since the Industrial Revolution, when textile workers, most famously the Luddites, protested that machines would destroy their livelihoods. The same fears resurfaced in the 1930s when John Maynard Keynes coined the phrase technological unemployment. And then in the 1960s, President John F. Kennedy declared that the major domestic challenge for the United States was to maintain full employment at a time when computers first began to appear in offices and robots first began showing up on factory floors. Well, they were wrong, the Luddites, Keynes, and John F. Kennedy, though I hate to put all three of those in the same sentence. Certainly, there have been disruptions and transitions, but technology has always ended up creating more jobs. Now, we've all heard from the pessimists who say this time around it's going to be different. The machines really will take all of our jobs. They often point to Kodak, which employed about 145,000 people making photographic equipment and was an icon of American manufacturing. It went into bankruptcy about the same time that Instagram debuted. But it wasn't Instagram that killed Kodak. It was the smartphone industry, which today employs far, far more people than Kodak ever did. We are here to avoid panic. We're here to refine the policies that will enable our countries, businesses, and most importantly, our citizens to cope with the disruptions and move forward, to take the greatest advantage of the digital economy, to avoid as many pitfalls as possible, and to chart a way forward that helps the inevitable losers in this new economy. Because it's one of these phrases you hear a lot in international organizations, it's a win-win. Well, I tend not to subscribe to that. I think that it's more often a win-lose. And so there have been losers in globalization. We see the people who are concerned about their futures, who've lost their jobs or lost access to what they thought would be a better future for their children. And we haven't done a very good job in many of our OECD countries, including my own, the United States, of responding to this and helping those losers become winners again. And so I think that one of the things that we're going to be looking at the OECD, not that we don't do it already, is job training and job retraining. And I had an interesting conversation last night also with Sylvia Schwacksäger about efforts here in Sweden to work with Ericsson's, for the people who are losing their jobs at Ericsson. And it's a smart thing to do. I think Sweden does that well. They're a good model for many countries about how you retrain workers and how you deal with workers who are put out of jobs. And so as we look at the OECD, at the digital economy, and look at the disruptions and transitions, I think one of the key focuses for us will be on how to turn the losers into winners. In closing, I would like to add my thanks to Norway, Australia, and the United Kingdom, which have provided financial support for the OECD's work on the next production revolution. And I think once that paper comes out sometime in early 2017, I hope that you will find your views reflected there. And I think you'll also find an enormous amount of very innovative work on behalf of the OECD staff. So thank you again, Minister Damberg and Vinnova, for your hospitality, for this outstanding conference agenda, and for your excellent collaboration on this very important work. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much to the Deputy Secretary-General of the OECD and the Minister of Enterprise and Innovation, two of the hosts of this conference. And thanks a lot to Doug Frantz for also putting it into both a historical context, but also focusing on the bigger picture, the opportunities and the challenges and the complexities.